Okay, I guess we're live, so you could probably hear me. So thank you very much to everyone who joined and to everyone who's attending this workshop. So my name is Hala. I am DSC lead at the Lebanese American University in Lebanon. So this event will be in English. ما أحكي عربي, so it will be in English. And the event will cover the using Firebase services with Python. Now, what do I mean by Firebase Services? You will see in a minute as I go through these slides, and then I will be going through some code and just working in real time. So as we go. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So this is part of the Digital Days, so the Middle East North Africa Digital Days initiative by Google developers. But you probably already know that. So I'm going to ask you a question now, and I want you to type it in the comment box. So have you used Firebase before? And if yes, for what? Now, I do know that Firebase is not a prerequisite for this workshop, but in general, I want to sort of get an idea of how experienced you are with Firebase. So feel free to type it down below in the chat. I'm gonna wait like maybe a minute. Someone said they haven't used it before. Not really. That's totally fine. This workshop is for beginners in all cases. So yeah, let's move on. So what is Firebase? Firebase is Google's mobile application development platform that helps you build, improve, and grow your app. Now, what do these three things mean? So how is Firebase really going to build, improve, and grow my app? We'll get to that in a minute. But it's really one of Google's big powerhouse, you could say, products. This is one of the products that as a developer, if you get used to it, this can take you places and places. So how, like technically, what is Firebase? So it's a mobile and web application development platform, meaning that we use it to make our mobile apps, our web apps, and we use it to make this whole app development process so much easier. So how are we going to use it? How does it benefit us? It has a large collection of tools that the developer wouldn't need to build. So in a normal case, so pre-Firebase, there are so many things that maybe you as a developer, as a back-end developer, you would need to work long hours for you to build. But Firebase is here as a back-end as a service, meaning that you do not really need to waste all your time building things like organizing the servers, organizing the user authentication, the storage, and just going through that really hard stuff that being a back-end or a full stack developer requires. So Firebase is really here to make all of that much easier. Now, if what I'm saying is confusing, don't worry, because like I said, we're gonna walk through this step by step. And the services that Firebase provides are already hosted on the cloud and they scale very easily. Meaning, let's take this example. So I'm gonna pause for a second and take an example. So how does this really work? Like, how does this benefit me with it being hosted on the cloud and scaling very easily? So imagine I'm an app developer. I'm a freelancer. I make Android apps or Flutter apps in my free time, and I want to release my apps to the App Store. I certainly don't have, like, as a student, I don't have the resources or like the manpower to be able to build an entire backend for my application. Thus, I can easily start a startup or deploy an application using Firebase, and then it will just really take me to a whole other level and make everything much easier. It was developed by Firebase, by the way, in 2011 and acquired by Google in 2014. Okay, so why, again, like I'm just going to stress about why or how it benefits us. So traditional full stack is really not simple at all. So we have the database, the server, we have user authentication, APIs that we call from the client, and it just can get extremely heavy for developers. So this can get like super annoying. So yeah, you can see that traditional full stack or traditional backend can look very messy, and this can be very hard. And this will take lots of hours for you to develop. And this is where Firebase comes in. So the traditional looks like this. You have to code the backend. You code your servers. You use the then client apps to talk to your servers and get information. Meanwhile, the Firebase SDK, so this Firebase software development kit, it provides you with a way to directly write it into your client app. meaning I will just use my client app, connect to my Firebase, and just get all the information I need very easily without having to go through all the tedious backend. And that's why we love Firebase. And that's why Google is really like this is one of Google's powerhouses because it's just so useful and beneficial. Okay, so some services provided by Firebase. So, like I said, it offers many services. What does that really mean? This means I can build an entire application just using Firebase tools. What do I mean by this? Meaning, there is Firebase Authentication, so which we're going to cover, by the way, in today's workshop. So, Firebase Authentication, what does it do? Log in, sign up, all those things. So you can log in with Facebook, log in with Google, log in with email and password. So this is part of every app. You should be able to agree with me on that. Great. Okay, this is authentication. What's another thing that Firebase provides? You have analytics. So you can monitor your users, like the data, and then use that data to sort of grow your application. Firebase also have crash analytics, meaning you can report bugs and know exactly what is ruining your application. There are two types of databases. So Firebase can sometimes be known specifically for its two major databases. So the real-time database, the Cloud Firestore, both of them are NoSQL databases. We will get into what that means later on in the workshop. So yeah, that's more and more of the services that Firebase provides. Like for example, I can build a whole app. I can use the cloud storage to store my files, to store them, somewhere in the cloud. Use the databases to store data, authentication to manage users, use the ML kit to involve machine learning in my application. So this is how powerful Firebase is, and a bunch of things. So you have in-app messaging, cloud messaging, so like push notifications, all those things. So it's really, really powerful. Okay, so like we said, it helps us build, grow, and earn. This is just another example. Like to earn, you can use the ad mob. To grow, you can use analytics, notifications, all those things. To develop, you have the real-time database, authentication, storage. So this workshop will cover real-time database, authentication, and cloud storage. So that's really what this workshop will cover. And now we can actually start coding and look into what we're going to build. So we will be coding on a Google Colab notebook. I have the notebook right here. So you should now be able to see the notebook. I have hidden most of the code, but we'll be going through it as well as making some changes ourselves. So before we actually start coding, let me just go through some things very quickly. Before I do that, I'm just going to ask, are there any questions to what we've covered so far? Everything we've talked about so far has been mainly theoretical, you could say. Any questions? All right, so I see no questions. I'll take a pause later on and cover any other questions. Okay, so the first service that we're going to cover is the authentication service. Before we get to do that, we have to actually create a Firebase project and then install a library which will help us talk to Firebase. So I have created already a Firebase project, so it's right here. This is console.firebase.google.com. What is this console.firebase.google.com? What it basically does is it takes you to the main Firebase platform where you can create projects. One Firebase project can contain multiple different things. So this is a project, it's empty. I have done nothing to it so far. I just created it because just to save time. So here's what we have. We can use the authentication to manage users, the Cloud Firestore database, the crash analytics, performance, everything I basically just talked about, you can see it here. It all exists in one project. So you can put multiple apps inside a project and then work with them with all of the features. Okay, so that's really how we start. Now to work with Python, so this workshop uses Python, we go back here and we're going to use something called the Pyrebase 4 library. By the way, this notebook will be available to you in the slides that are shared after the event. Therefore, you can go through the notebook on your own and sort of experiment with the code as well as learn new things. Okay, so now I did guide you with how to create a Firebase project. the first thing we need to do is actually install the Pyrebase 4 library. So how do I install the Pyrebase 4 library? It's very simple, so I just use pip. So I will run this cell right here. So I will pip install Pyrebase 4. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that this really uses the Google Colab notebook, but you can use a local machine to sort of perform all of these things. But I'm using a notebook just to sort of include both explanations and code. Okay, so I already have Pyrebase, therefore requirement already satisfied. So now that I've installed Pyrebase, by the way, you can check out the documentation here. Pyrebase has some really good documentation that you can use to sort of really learn how to use it. Cool. So now I'm going to connect to Firebase. How do I do that? So how do I connect to Firebase? There is one thing that I have already done before the workshop began. So to connect to Firebase, you have to add an app. For Python, you choose web, and then you will receive the Firebase SDK, and you will just have to copy paste this information. The reason I did it before the time is because it is a bit time consuming because you have to change the quotation marks for all the key value pairs. But this is just a very preliminary step to all of the things we want to do. Okay, awesome. How do we move on? Now I'm gonna assume I copy pasted my Firebase config credentials. Then I am going to initialize an app using Pyrebase. So pyrebase.initialize app Firebase config, and I save this in a variable called Firebase. So this is what I'll be using to talk to my Firebase project, which is right here. Okay, so now we start with authentication. So if I open up authentication, don't be scared. This is like completely normal. The very first thing you're going to see is this part. All right, did I run this? So let me run this also. Okay, the very first part is this. So you have auth equals firebase.auth. This is how I am able to connect to my auth client. So I can run this. Before I do run this, let me set up the authentication in the project. So now we are in the project. How do I set up authentication? You can see that we have all of these different Firebase features right here. Here, I have actually the authentication feature. So I press on authentication and it will take me here. What this is basically a list of all my users for my application. So Anna, if I have a social media app, I am going to be using Firebase authentication. I can access all my users, their like identifiers here. So first I need to set up a sign-in method. If I don't set up a method, I will not be able to really use this. So I click sign-in method. Here are the different ways I can sign in with Firebase. For this workshop, we'll be covering email password authentication. So all I have to do is simply enable it like this. And now it's enabled. The rest, we can keep them for maybe another workshop one day, but they are like a bit more complicated. So Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, Google, all those things. So going back to our users. Now, what will my code do? So the very first function I am going to write is the following function. It is the login function. Now, how does this login function really work? It looks like this. First, I'm simply going to get the email from the user. So email is equal to input, enter email. Then I am going to get the password from the user. So this is standard Python. We should be clear on this. Okay? So actually, I'm going to clear this stuff right here, and then I'll put it back later, just so that everything is a bit more clear. Okay. So now I have the user's email and the password that they entered in the command line when I'm running. So like when you run something in the terminal, in the console, there you go. Okay, so now we have the email and the password. What I'm going to do is simply use one line. This is how powerful Firebase is, and Firebase as well. One line is the following. I'm going to log in equals auth.signin with email and password, and this is it. There is nothing else. So it is one line of code that will enable you to sign in with email and password. And now I will highlight exactly how easy it is in a moment. So in another case, we have the sign up function. And don't think I'm going too fast because I will be recovering these again as I run the code and we go through it again. Now I have the sign up function. So, okay, we print sign up, enter email, enter password. Same as before. We're getting input from the user. Let me just run this and this as well so that I have the functions. Okay, Then what I'm going to do is simply get the auth.create here, auth.create user with email and password, email password. Like I said, one line of code. It's simply that easy. So there's really nothing to worry about. Now let's ignore the rest for a moment and go back to our main. So what will really be happening? Okay, so now I take input from the user, which is their answer. Are you a new user? Yes or no? Okay, now if the user puts yes, they're a new user, they need to sign up, right? So you should agree with me on that. So a new user wants to create a new account, they want to sign up. So create user. Now, if they say no, they want to log in. So they are not a new user, they already have an account, they just want to log in. So let's run the main actually, and let's see what happens. Okay, so are you a new user? I'm gonna say yes because we don't have any users yet in our project. You can see that right here. Okay, so I'm gonna say yes, I'm a new user. And it will tell me sign up. Okay, enter email. Now I'm gonna give it a fake email. So fake mail at gmail.com. Now I don't know if this exists, but okay, no problem. We can leave, okay, no problem. Enter a password. So I'm gonna say fake pass. So this is my fake pass. Then I enter. Okay, so now you guys should agree with me that I have just created an account. Right, so let's see, let's check. If I press the reload button here, actually we can't see the account yet because I haven't ended the function. No problem. Let's say no, I don't want to log in. Okay, now if I reload, it's not showing. Let me just check for a minute. Okay, something's up. Okay, this was the issue actually. Now this should work. I forgot to run one cell. This is what happens when we use notebooks. So no problem. Fake mail at gmail.com, and then oh, I typed in B. Okay. So yes, I am a new user. Fake mail at gmail.com, and then password is fake pass. Now I enter no, I do not want to log in. Okay, so now I'm done. So now if I reload this, there we go. So we have a new user. So we have fakemail at gmail.com, and then we have their user ID as well as the date that they signed in. So today is November 4. They signed in November 4. It was created on November 4 as well. So we created the account today. So that's really how easy it is. So through one line of code right here, auth.create user with email and password, we were able to really just create a user. Now, why do I have a try and accept? Because simply, if I do if I do retype in a new email when I'm trying to create an account, it should tell me the username already, the email already exists. So this is why there is an exception, because this will throw an exception otherwise. So running main again, if I say I'm a new user, yes, and it asks me to enter email, and I say fakemail at gmail.com, and I enter any password, doesn't matter. Email already exists, so this is not valid. Now, if I want to try logging in, so I can run it again. Am I a new user? No, I already have an account. So fakemail at gmail.com, and then what I'm going to do is fake pass, enter, successfully logged in. And this should, like, if this was a different day, you'd see this updated. One thing I want to highlight here, actually, you cannot see the user's password. There is no way for you to see a user's password because this is sensitive information. Now, one thing you can do is you can add users manually. So now I can add, let's say, dummy mail at mail.com, and then, dummy pass, and add, I wrote the password, add user. Okay, you can see that I just added another user manually, and it was created today, but they never signed in. So this is really how authentication works. It really focuses on these two lines. So this is login, which is equal to auth.sign in with email and password, and this one, auth.create user with email and password. This is it. This is it. So yeah, it's really that easy. Okay, so now we can move on from authentication. While I would love to play around more with auth, we don't really have so much time in the workshop. So I really want to cover other Firebase services. So this is like a way for you now to manage your users. Like I said, there are other ways you can use Facebook, Gmail, GitHub, anything. But yeah, we can leave that for maybe another day. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is actually storage. So I'm just gonna go to storage here and I'm gonna set up my cloud storage. Storage is simply for putting files in the web. So here I have text files, images, your files have to be stored somewhere. If you're like Instagram and you're a social media app, like let's not say Instagram, you're a social media app and each profile has like 10 images, where are those images really going to be stored if not on the cloud? So that's really what the cloud storage is for. Okay, so now we get started and we just allow this for now and then we're going to change it. So just click next and you can leave this as is and then you create a storage bucket. Okay, so now we're just going to wait for like a second. It's going to take a bit, like some time. It happens because it's creating a cloud storage bucket. So we just wait for it. And yeah, okay. In the meantime, I'm going to just close the authentication for now and open up the cloud storage. Okay, so just one thing I want to highlight. Before, there was one line of code. I need to open authentication again. This one. So auth is equal to firebase.auth. This is how I talk to the auth feature in my Firebase. Now, I have to do this. Storage is equal to firebase.storage. Okay, so here's our storage. This is what we see. We can upload a file. Files can be anything. Images, PDFs, documents, XML files, HTML files, virtually anything. This is just a cloud. Consider this your Google Drive. Think of it like that. It's that easy. Okay, what do I want to do? I want to change the rules. Why do I want to change the rules? I'll tell you guys in a second. So rules are essentially how you allow read and write. Currently, the rules are set like this. Just look at this one line. Basically, what this does is it only allows you to upload and download files from the storage if request.auth is not null. Meaning, if someone is signed in, you can actually read and write to the storage. We're just gonna make it like this, if true, simply because it's easier for us now when we're testing things. Obviously, you never want to deploy an application with this, but like just ignore this for now. Okay, so now this is my storage. It's empty. There are no files here yet. Now, we're just gonna go through the code and see exactly what's going on. Let's ignore the download for a bit and really focus on this part. Okay, so we connected to the storage. Next, I'm going to upload a file. How do I upload a file? I need two things to upload a file. I need one, the file name. So I have prepared some sample files for this demo. So if you see right here, I have my files on the navigation bar, three text files. I have a dummy text file, so lorem ipsum, the Latin dummy text. Okay, then I have the Shakespeare. It's a poem. I forgot which Shakespeare poem, but it's one of the Shakespeare poems. And then I also have the story of Google. So this is how Google started. So it began in 1995 at Stanford. So these are just some like sample text files that I want to upload to the storage. So to upload something to storage, I'm just gonna close these. I just have to give it the file name of what I want to upload and then the cloud file name. What the cloud file name is simply just what we're gonna call it in the cloud. Now this will be more clear just like as I demo it, so I'm gonna run it. Okay, so now what is the name of the file I wanna upload to storage? I'm gonna upload story of Google. So story of Google dot txt. So story yeah, okay. So the story of google.txt, and I enter. This means I want to upload this file right here. What is the name of the file in storage? Anna, I don't want to name it story of Google. I want to name it Google. So google.txt. I can do whatever I want. Okay, I press enter. I get a URL simply because of this piece of code. It's not important right now. But okay, this one line, storage.child cloud file name.put file. So it put the file, so which was the name of the file we want to upload to storage. So this one, story of Google. Cloud file name is, I called it google.txt. So now if I go here and I refresh, now storage isn't as fast with the refreshing, but there we go. So we can see google.txt is now in our cloud storage. So again, it's that easy. It's one line of code. Now here, if I press on it, I get this tab right here, and it has a URL. So this URL will take me to the text file stored on the cloud. So Firebase storage.googleapis.com, and then this entire thing right here. And this is the actual text file stored on the cloud. Okay. Now, this is just really one way to do it. Now you have more information like metadata, and yeah, this is like one way to store something on the cloud. Why did we get a URL? Simply because I printed storage.child cloud file name dot get URL none. This is like just given, you always have to put none. So this get URL gets me the URL of this file on the cloud. There it is. Okay, that's really yeah, so that's really how it goes. So now we were able to upload our very first file to storage. We can do something else, is we can actually also choose where it gets uploaded. So I can create files here, folders, and do this. So now I'm gonna run it. I'll just do this very quickly before I run out of time. So the name of the file I want to upload is Shakespeare.txt, so the poem, and I press enter. What do I want to name it in the cloud? I want to name it poems/shakes.txt, and I enter. Okay, I get the URL. Now, if I go back here and I refresh, let's see what happens in the storage. I get a folder called poems, and I have shakes.txt inside it, and I can actually access it, and it will contain the poem. So really, that's how I was able to create folders. Ideally, in a real-world scenario, you can create a folder for every user, for example. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is simply just read from the file. So now I can read from cloud file name. I can do this. If I copy this and I paste it here. So the reason I'm doing this is to get the name of the file in real time. So now if I run it, I can just say I want to read google.txt. I press enter, and it will get me the story of Google, and it will print it here. How did I do that? Because I used the get URL function. So I got the URL of this text file in the cloud. Then it did a URL lib, a read from the URL. So this is standard Python. You should know it. If you don't, it's just this line. And it read from this URL on the internet, and then it just printed what it read. That's really how it goes. Okay, so now we can be sort of done with the cloud storage. You can continue to upload and download files here. You can use things other than text files. But one thing here is you can also use this piece of code to download a file into another file. The reason I'm not running it here is because I am in Google Colab and not on my local machine. This doesn't really work out that well. Okay, so we can be done with storage. Let's move on to the database. So I know it's a lot of information, but these are like introductions to 3 of its main services. So database. First thing we're going to do is create data, but before we do that, let's actually go and create our database. So now we have the Cloud Firestore and the real-time database. Actually, let me return to my slides. Okay. So here's what I have. Yes, real-time database is a NoSQL database. What does this really mean? It is a NoSQL database, meaning that it stands for actually non-SQL or not only SQL. If you're familiar with SQL, you know that data is structured in tables and you have rows and columns with all this sort of information. But the SQL databases usually follow a specific schema. NoSQL, on the other hand, is more free. There is no schema. It's schemaless, and the data is really not structured. So you can do basically whatever you want. You're going to see that in a minute when I show some examples. It's very flexible and it's highly scalable. Why do we want to use NoSQL databases in the first place? They're very useful for storing unstructured data. They're highly efficient and scalable. There are so many reasons. I can have a whole event just on NoSQL databases because they're that popular and powerful. But in that case, let's just talk about the real-time database. So this is the real-time database. What does this GIF really mean? This GIF means that basically it's a real-time database. Data is updated in real time. Meaning, so device number one, it sends out some new data to the database. It just automatically gets updated in all other devices. This is what the GIF really means. So an example of a real-time database. This is really what it looks like. It does look kind of weird, so I do get that. So let's really explore it step by step. Okay, so this is a NoSQL hierarchical database, a document-oriented database. What does this mean? This means that here I have a root node. So this is like a tree. I have a root node and I have a child. So the root node is the name of my Firebase project. Then the child people, for example, and each one of these guys, so there are three of them, is a data point. It is one document, one, you could say, row in a table, for example. So now I have this guy, John Smith. He's employed and his address is in New York. I have Jane. She's employed. She's not employed. Her age is 32 and her address is in LA. So this is what a real-time database is. It looks like. It's just a tree, and each tree has some information. The information is stored in like key value pairs. So address, New York, employed, true, key value pairs. And these key value pairs sort of really resemble the JSON style. So here's again, like let me repeat this. There's a root node, a child node, another child, 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 and these are its children, the key value pairs. So that's really how it looks like. Now, what I wanted to also show in the example is that this is also a real-time database example. So here you have the root node, but instead of storing three people, we're storing objects. It has a pen, and we're storing users, and the users have one guy who's named Mark, and it looks like that, and this guy who's named John, and it looks like that. This one has a random generated ID, this one doesn't. Because it is a NoSQL database, everything is allowed, meaning, I'm trying to find a way to explain this very easily. It's a real-time database, so it's just very flexible. So here I have objects, users, or person, ID, and all those things very messed up in one database, and that's okay. Meanwhile, on the other hand, here I have it's more organized, but still, I'm just showing you that this is allowed. So both are valid. Keep that in mind. Okay, so back to coding. Let's see. Okay, so now we want to go to real-time database. Like I said before, Cloud Firestore is also an example of a database, but for this workshop, we're using the real-time database. We click Create Database, start in test mode to make it easier for us, and we open it up. Here is my real-time database. It's currently empty. Now I can add nodes like this. I can add users and add children to it, and then give this guy name John, and then another user, or like another element for it, age 32, and I add, and this is what it looks like. It's hierarchical, root node, and just like that. So root node and child nodes. I'm gonna erase this for now because we're gonna learn how to add this stuff with the code and not manually. So here's what we're going to do. We're gonna push our first data. So I'm gonna run this. DB is equal to firebase.database, similar to what we did with the auth and the storage. So similar to that. Okay. So now I'm going to push my data. I have here this data, age 20, address is New York, Los Angeles, and then I press db.push data. Okay. What happens in the real-time database? It gets updated in real time, and this is what we got. So this data that I wrote in a Python dictionary in this JSON format, okay? So if you're a web developer, you know JSON. If you're not, it's fine. JSON is so easy to learn. So here in JSON format, I pushed it into the database, and this is what I got as a child to the root node. The root node is MENA DD workshop. This means that DB here is actually representative of the root node. Now I can also create paths. So now I can create db.child branch.child employees.push data. So now if I run this, here I created branch.child employees.child this data. So this is a randomly generated ID. I can delete the previous one to make it look better. Okay, so this is the sort of structure of a real-time database. Cool. So now it's hierarchical, it's JSON-like format, it's document-oriented. Great. Now we know how to create some data. Now you might tell me, what if I don't want to create this, ugly key right here? I want my own key. I want the key to be Jane and the age to be 20 inside it. Here's what I do. I use the dot set. So before we were using dot push, now we use dot set. So if I run it, there we go. And now I have the exact same info, but here, instead of the key being an actual randomly generated ID, it's actually just John, because I specified here db.child john.set data. So that's really the difference. That's how we create data. Now, this may be like somewhat a bit tough to take in. That's fine, because here we're pushing data with an ID. Here we're like pushing it with a path, and here we're pushing it using set to get no ID. Now this one right here, I'm gonna run it regardless, because this is actually, I'm going to clear everything and run it again. I'm just gonna use this to demo the other parts of the database. So now I deleted everything. I'm gonna run it again and put some data. So this follows the exact same stuff that we did here. It's just more organized to provide me with all this data that I'm gonna expand. Note that we have employees, and we have 3 employees here, so Mark, John, and Jane. We have information about them like their career and their age. And we have others, so Lily and George, except they don't use the ID. So these are without ID. Okay, now I'm done with creating data. How do I update data? Okay, the first thing I know how to do is very simple. It's one line. So as you can see, everything we learned today are one-liner codes. So I have db.child branch.child employees. So we can see here, we're following this parent-child syntax. Child branch.child employees .child Lily. Here we are. So this is thing that we did right here. .child Lily. .update age to 18. So now her age is 48. I want to update her age to 18. Run it. It's so easy. Like it's all one line. Her age is now 18. You can see how easy that is. It's so straightforward. Okay. I'm actually gonna hide this. Okay. All right, this is our first way to update. We can do multi-location updates as well. So simply you specify 2 different paths and you do the updates inside it. So same thing as before. Now I'm gonna go through it super quickly. And this is what it did. One thing this does actually, it deletes the other information. So it only updates by overriding, which is not great. Now don't stress too much about this. I'm actually gonna delete these and move on to the more important stuff. Okay. So now, if I want to update data with an unknown key, this is super important. So before, I was updating knowing very well that the key was Lily, and then I was updating her age. But now I don't know the key. What is this stuff here? How am I supposed to know it if this is unique? Well, simply, very easy. I will run this and I will tell you. I get db.child.branch.child employees.get, meaning I just got all the children of employees. Then for each of these employees.each, if the name is Jane, I want to update her age to 39. So now Jane, her age is now 39. So really what we did here is we got all the children, we queried them, we checked for which one the name is Jane, and we updated for that one the age to 39. That's really how we update. Now we're going to delete some data. Deleting is also very similar to update. So deleting an item with a known key means, so I know the keys. So let me add Lily again, actually. So employees, Lily, and then I'm gonna give Lily an age of 18. And now, if I wanna delete Lily, all I do db.child branch employees.child lily.remove. It's so easy. Like I said, again, it's a one-liner all the time. So I ran this, I think, and now Lily is gone. So it was removed. To delete an entire node and its children, now this is a bit dramatic, you can delete the whole thing using the .child branch .child employees.remove. So this would remove the entire thing. So this would be empty. Now to delete data with an unknown key, very similar to the update, we actually, very similarly to the update, we are able to delete the key if by doing the same process. So we get all the children of employees, then for task in employees.each. So for each person, you could say, we just get the key if the name is Jane, and then we delete this one. So to delete Jane, I run this one, and then I can see that Jane is gone. Okay, so before I move on to read, I see some comments. So I'm just gonna go through very fast, like the latest ones. Is that Python? Yes, it's Python. This is the Google Colab notebook, so you can use this for reference. Yes, you get the slides for reference as well as this stuff here, so the code and everything. You're definitely gonna get this. And what library is used? The Pyrebase 4 library. So it's right here. You can check it here, Pyrebase 4, when you get the code. And yeah, so for other information, we'll check it later. Okay, and finally, the read data. So I have 2 more minutes to get this done. So now we want to read the data that we push to the database. How do I read data? Well, we've been doing this for a while now. Actually, let me clear the outputs. I don't know why. Okay. So now I run this. All I need to do, db.child branch.child employees.get, then I print them, so .each, and then I print each the value. I can add another thing by adding the key. So this is the same as the above code, and now I'm able to add the key right here. So I have the key and the value for each one. So this is how I query. Now I can put conditions here. So this is people db.child branch .child age. But to do this, you actually need to change the indexes. And I believe we don't really have the time for me to go through the indexes. But this is definitely something you can follow up with me about, and we can talk about it more. Okay, so that's it really for reading data. That's it. We've covered the real-time database as well as the cloud storage as well as the authentication. Let me know if you guys have questions. We have like maybe a minute and a half to cover any questions. I'm aware this was maybe a bit like too fast, but there's a lot of info and these are very good services. So if you do get used to them, I highly encourage you to use them in your apps. If there are no questions, we can consider ourselves done. Thank you so much to everyone who joined, and I really hope you were able to benefit from this event and learn something new. You're welcome to everyone. Oh yeah, about pricing, they are free for a certain like a certain amount that you use up, but later if you start having millions of users, you start to have to pay. But they're free for a long time, so you can support a bunch of millions of users. You can use this with VS Code very easily. Just download pip and just use the exact same code, nothing different. Okay, thank you to everyone who joined. I guess we're done.